Surprise! I'm down here. Welcome, my Greeks and barbarians, to Byzantine Music Zero, Week 4 Rhythm Modifiers and Other Special and Super Fun News that contradict everything that we've learned so far. Not exactly, but not exactly not either. Uh, if you haven't checked out Unit 3, probably go watch that first, and then you can come and take a look at this. But we will kind of overlap it a little bit, so this is probably going to be a pretty short lesson, but it's got a lot of stuff to kind of digest, so you'll have all week to kind of lose your mind over this. Let's go. So, we have several symbols that change the rhythm of the music that we're singing in Byzantine music. If you don't have any of these symbols, everything's just going to be beat, 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 beat. And unlike Western music, they don't write time signatures so much as they just kind of group certain amounts of notes and neumes into like groups of 3, 4, 2, 5, and 6 with just little lines. And they don't say 3, 4, they just say 3, or they'll say 5, or whatever. So the first one we're going to look at is the gorgon. It's a little boomerang. It's a lot smaller than that. I just blew it up. And what it does is it combines surrounding neumes into a single beat. Welcome to the chaos. So if we just read these 4 ison neumes, it'll just be ne, 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 right? Same length each time. If we put a gorgon in there, we actually take the note that it's on and the note behind it, and you split them in half, and they fill the space of one beat. So now you have ta, 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 ta. Nee, 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 nee. And it's always the note that it's on and the note before it. You can move it anywhere. So now this is ta, 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 ta. Nee, 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 nee. Pretty basic. If you put 2 of these little boomerangs on top of each other, you get what's called a digorgo. And the digorgo works just like the gorgo, but instead it creates a group of 3. And those 3 get split into one beat. So instead of going ta, 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 like we did here, it's ta, 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 like that. Makes sense? Ta, 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 ta. Nee, 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 nee. And if you add another one, you get a trigorgo, which makes a group of 4. Do, 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 1, do, 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 do. I've got a really big delay on this mic, so it's hard to do articulations very well. Anyway, now we have the dotted gorgon, or the gorgon me appli. I'm not going to expect you to nail these. They always tend to be reserved for more advanced students. But why not? Why not let you know just how crazy this stuff gets? So let's take a look at this. What happens here? It works like a gorgon, but then it weighs one of the notes a little heavier and adds duration to it. Specifically, it doubles the duration of it, but in a ratio with the other notes. So get ready to do some math. So as we showed here, the gorgon splits 2 notes and puts them into one beat. The trigorgo takes 3 notes and puts them into one beat equally. If we have a regular gorgon with a dot, It's basically saying now we have this note taking the space of 2, this note taking the space of 1, and we're dividing that total into the beat. So it becomes a triplet with the first note, whichever side the dot is on, is twice as long. I hope that makes sense. So in this case, it's ta, 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 ta. So ta, 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 ta. If I'm going to count triplets, triplet, 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 da, 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 that's what it's going to sound like. And vice versa. Da, 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 da. If you do it with the gorgo ceases to be a triplet and now kind of works like a trigorgo, where it divides everything into sixteenths. But whatever note the dot is on gets twice as long. So this becomes ta, 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 because the dot is on the far left. If you want this note, you put the dot there. And then that note gets the length. So that becomes ta, 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 ta. Da, 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 da. Make sense? Probably not, but don't worry, you don't see this very often. And then, if it's on the right-hand side, just like with the single gorgo, the last note gets the weight. Now, as you've noticed, the symbol always is on the second neum in the grouping. Why? I don't know. Like, even here, they just chose that. And by the way, you can go, like, you can keep stacking these as much as you want. You add another one, then it puts 5 into a beat. Another one and puts 6, but you almost never see that, so forget it. So that's the dotted gorgo and what happens there. Now let's talk about stuff that slows down our beats and makes longer notes. Here's a klezmer. It adds a beat to a neum. Easy peasy. Ta, ta, ta. So if I'm going to tap the quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, ta, ta. Takes 2 beats. Gets a half note. If you've been following Western music, you know that this note is twice as long as a quarter. But since the beat is a quarter, you add a quarter to it, you essentially double the length. So that's, you just hold that note twice as long. Ni, ni, ni. You can also do it going down on any, on pretty much any note. And you might see this up above or below, depending on what we call orthography. Ni, 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 wo, ba, ni. And that last ni takes twice as long. Takes a beat extra. Here's the dot, also known as diabli. It also adds a beat to a neum. Great. So, remember when we just saw this? Well, you could also write it like this. Why? I don't know. But you can also add 2 beats with it. You can add as many as you want. You can have 3, 4, 5, who's counting? Have as much as you like. As much as you like. 1, 2, 3, and then you're off. And as you can see, that's a dotted quarter, which is equal to a quarter, or sorry, a dotted half, which is equal to a half plus a quarter, also known as the length of 3 quarters. Now we have the argon. This, you really only see it in one situation, and it kind of behaves like a gorgon and a klezmer combined. It's almost always on this little Kendimata Oligo mix. A cool little trick that my teacher taught me, because you can actually have like a emi the argo, you can have a bunch of these going up however many times you want. And what you do is you count how many arms. 1, 2. If it's this, and then 1.5. So like if there's a vertical line above here, then you would count it 1, 2, 3 beats. If it's 2 full aragog, you would do 1, 2, 3, 4 beats. So what it does is it basically works like a gorgo and makes you go nibavu. But then when you hit nibavu, that's your first handle, and you hold it for however many more handles you have. Nibavu 2. So if it was that vertical line, it would be nibavu, right? 1, 2, 3. Nibavu 2, 3. So this is just 2. Nibavu 2. And then you're done. But if you had 2 full symbols, it would be Nibavu 2, 3, 4. If it was 9, if it was like, 9 times, it would be Nibavu 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyway. So now let's look at a couple of rhythm combinations. If you mix a kalasma and a gorgon, utter chaos ensues. Not exactly. It basically turns the kalasma, instead of having a full extra beat, a half of that full extra beat gets taken away and given away, and then the final half is given to the next note. So you would just go, instead of it would go like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. Not that complicated. And it is represented in Western music as a dotted quarter and an eighth music, because those two add up to 2 quarter notes, right? That's 1.5 quarter notes. That's 0.5 quarter notes. That's 0.5 quarter notes. 1.5 plus 0.5 is 2. 1.5 plus 0.5 is 2. And that's how it all still, the length of the glasma is preserved. This actually winds up grouping. That's why I like to say that the gorgon and then it kind of groups everything together. When it's with the glasma, the beat with the glasma becomes a part of is half the glasma, half is what the glasma and half is. And as you can see, it can be anywhere. I put it below. I'm not even sure if that's right. Anyway, but I don't care. Then you also have the Aglia and Gorgon. This little candy cake. Don't pay any attention to that. That little dot is also Bonabili, but that little dot is also Bonabili. This is a figure you see all the time. And as you can see, the rhythm is exactly the same. So, why did they write it 2 different ways? I don't know. Now we have our special neumes. Iporoi. This note is just 2 consecutive descending notes, and always on the same syllable. Oh, I didn't make this a fool. Oh well, I made a mistake. Oh well, it should be a mistake. But if you're singing a syllable, you almost never see the Iporoi by itself. You almost always see it. The Sinexalafron is basically the same thing as just telling you, but this is just telling you when you do that jump, when you fill it in, what does that mean? Fill it in. Well, what does that mean? If we have this elafron right here, right? If you were to put a little, the apostrophe next to it, you would make the apostrophe next to it, you would make the sinexis elafron. And that just means instead of going insert this little note in between and fill it out 2 notes. It doesn't change the duration of either one of these. You could just as well sing that. But because this little apostrophe as the boroi with the it's what you write when you're going to put. It's what you write when you're going to put another syllable there. Da, 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 da. And like I said, the last thing that we're doing, this is a short lesson. The last thing that we're doing, this is a short lesson. And the last thing we're doing is we're going to look at these little stack combinations with the gorgon. So you might remember that I said that when you remember that I said the stack of the Kandimata Neoligon, stack of the Kandimata Neoligon, the Kandimata is always read first. The Kandimata is always read first. And the reason why I told you that is because, even though it appears here, this note, it's read like it's above this note. So if we were to unstack that, like that, right? Right? So that's why I say it has to. So that's to think of why I say it has to. You have to think of this as it being read. Bottom to top. Right? This is the opposite. Look at the Western notation. This is the opposite. Look at the Western notation here. Because it's read. Because it's read, then they get the Oligon first, and then they get the always on top of the and the Orgo is always on top. Unstack this little guy. Unstack this little guy. And that's why it's like that. And that's why it goes new bubble. Makes sense? Makes sense? That's it! That's it! If anybody has any questions, I'll stay on. If anybody has any questions, I'll stay on just for a couple of minutes. The two modes that are most compatible with Western music, which are the enharmonic and hard chromatic modes. Third mode also varies on Ga, also lovingly called Legal Third by being some of my guys. Hard chromatic, which is the sticker RX second mode, the sticker RX speed, the medium speed, the fast, and second mode, the fast. There's a couple of other hard chromatic modes, but that's all we're going to deal with for today. For that, and then after that we'll get into the soft. Diatonics and soft chromatics. And that's it. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them. And I'm gonna mute real quick. But Well, I just checked the live and it looks like it's still kind of crackled up. So here, I'm gonna redo a part of this since we got some time. It was a pretty short little lesson. So give me 1 second, I'll get prepared. All right, and we're back. So the dotted digorgo, in the same way that the dotted regular gorgo changes it from being a group of two into a beat into a group of three, but with an extra beat added to one of the notes, making it a triplet figure. The dotted digorgo changes from being a three notes into one beat into basically three notes, but then one of the notes has an extra bit of duration added to it. So this will have 1 unit, 1 unit, and 2 units, which makes four. So then it becomes 4 units into one beat. And the first note, if the dot on the left is on the left of the digorgo, we'll go there, which will be like this. Da, 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 da. And if you want it to go here, you go like that, and it goes da 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 with the dot on the center. And then if the dot's on the right hand side, it's da 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 da. Make sense? Didn't think so. But that's how it works. And also, yeah, it's always on the second note of the grouping. Why? I don't know. So now we have the klasma. We're going to get into some symbols that mean that they slow down and they lengthen the length of notes. So the klasma adds a beat to a new. Easy peasy. So if we put a klasma on this last one, it adds another quarter note duration to the quarter note, making it a half note. Ni, 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 da, da, da. Pretty simple, huh? Easy peasy. You can also put it on multiple different types of notes. Sometimes it'll be above or below, but if you see it, it always means you add a beat. Vupani. Make sense? Good. So now we have the dot, diabli. So the dot, guess what it does? It also adds a beat to a new. Great. So that can also be written like that. Vupani. Why? I don't know. But the cool thing about the dot, well, the more versatile thing about the dot is you can add more. However many as you want. Nobody's counting. Do 3, 4, 5, 6 apples. You're fine. Add a bunch. Go nuts. Just put dots all over the page. And what it'll do is it'll keep adding one beat to whatever the note is. So if it's 2, it adds 2 beats, making the total length 3/4 notes, which gets represented as a dotted half. Because that's what the mathematical equivalent is, if you've been paying attention to Western Music Zero. Now we have the otagon. It's kind of an interesting character because you don't see it in a lot of different situations, mostly in this upcoming situation I'm going to show you. But it works like a gorgon and a klasma combined. So, but what does that mean? It means that it puts a gorgon in here and causes these kendimata to be sung quickly with the ison before. Ni, nipavu, and then it causes the oligon to have the duration of however many of these little handles the oligon has. So if it has two, if it just goes zigzag, then it's nipavu, 2 beats, zigzag. But if it goes zigzag, zig, zigzag, zig, and if it has 4, like it's a full 2 symbol, oligon, the oligon, nipavu, like that. Nipa 1, 2, 3, 4. You get a full 4 beats. So nipavu 2. That's this one. If it's one more handle, nipavu 2, 3. Oops, sorry. Did I do that right? Yeah, I did. Nipavu 2, 3. And then if there's a full 2, it's nipavu 2, 3, 4, which you do see. So all you do is you count it. 1, 2, and then if there's 2 of those stacked up on top of each other, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And if there's only 1.5, then you say nipavu 2, 3. Hopefully that makes sense. I told you this is going to be a short lesson, so here we are with rhythm combinations. So if you combine a glasma and a gorgon, the length of the glasma is still preserved. It's still 2 full beats. But the gorgon steals the last half of the second beat. So this becomes ni, 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 like that. So this would, if this wasn't even here at all, this would just be ni, ni. So you think of it basically as the first beat is what it would be like without any of this. Or you could visualize having another yuson back here as di, 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 but those 2 are tied together. And it's represented like this. Dotted quarter, 8th note. Di, di, di. Pretty simple. Just like how the appli is redundant in other ways, if you see an appli and a gorgon like this, it creates the same dotted quarter and 8th note thing. Pay no attention to this little candy cane thing there. That's called nandikanoma, by the way. You're not going to be looking at that until you go with a teacher that teaches you about ornamentation and stuff, because that's kind of a symbol that lends itself to a bit of ornamentation. But we're just going to read it dry. And this is way off. This shouldn't be ne and vu. This should be ba and vu. But anyway. But as you can see, it's the same thing. Dun, dun, vu, da, 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 da. It still takes a full 2 beats, but the second beat is stolen by the gorgon at stage right. And finally, our special neumes, the boroi. That's 2 descending notes in succession on the same syllable. Da. That should be a vu. But you usually see it with a gorgon, and it becomes da. The sinekis alafron is the same thing, but you use it when you're going to have a new syllable. And this is how I was able to kind of remember this. This elafron is really all that's happening intervallically in the notation. And this is just a symbol to let you know that you should fill in as you execute the elafron. So if you remember, the elafron is going down to nizoke, but you just go nike. It's a direct third. Da-da. If you have the sinekis elafron, you don't go voni. You would add the filler note in between and fit it still into the 2 beats. Vupani, vuni. And as you can see here, this is what you would do if you had 2 different syllables. Da, da. And just as a little addendum, are stack combinations. You may remember that I said that a oligon kendimata is always read from the bottom up. So kendimata first and the oligon. Why did I say that? Because if you have a gorgo on one of these stack figures, it's read as though the gorgo is over the kendimata. So this becomes nipavu. And that's what it looks like if you unstack it. Like I said, the kendimata are first. So this oligon is at the end. The gorgo goes on the kendimata first and affects this ison behind it. Nipavu. If it's the other way around, the kendimata are afterwards. So it affects the oligon instead. If I unstack this, it looks like that. Nipavu. Make sense? And that's it. It's a very short lesson, but it's a lot of stuff. When we come in next week, we're going to look at enharmonic and hard chromatic modes, which are most compatible with Western music because they agree mostly with the piano and all that. We'll read a couple things, and yeah, then we'll start going through each mode. Looking forward to finally getting into reading some notation with y'all. And if y'all have any questions, I'm going to stick around just for like another 5 minutes on mute. Go ahead and ask in the chat. And we'll see you either at our rehearsal live video coming up in a few hours, or tomorrow's live rehearsal video, or next week. Thanks for sticking around and learning a couple of crazy things about this notation. Cheers.